You read the title of this video? No, that wasn't a typo. Today, I'm going to talk about the benefits and drawbacks of unrestricted online access in childhood from the perspective of someone who was probably the first to really experience it. The name of this video comes from this news broadcast about the hidden dangers of the PlayStation Portable.
Are the words PlayStation Portable going to end up on your kid's Christmas list? PSPs are good, clean fun, right? So why are they also known by the name PlayStation Portable? Fox 29's Robin Taylor has some information that'll really open your eyes.
I like how he says this like it's not a commonly known fact that internet-connected devices can have porn on them. They can access it easily. And that's probably because at the time, that wasn't a commonly known fact.
We don't want to spoil anybody's Christmas, but there are hidden dangers parents should be aware of. I'm sure you wouldn't give your child pornography, but you just might be giving them access to it with today's most popular electronics.
She looks like the kind of Karen who would clutch her purse around a black guy and blame that game RuneScape for the autism her kid has that can't be cured with essential oils. Just the look of judgment on her face when talking about these so-called electronics, I can absolutely tell what her opinion of this is beyond the script.
Gaming devices are all the rage, with a generation of teens convincing
God, I love Battlefront 2. The EA games are just such a disgrace.
harmless devices can do more than play football or race cars.
Yeah, like porn.
Inside is a high-powered computer that, with a Wi-Fi connection, can access the internet.
She does not know what video games are.
A parent can watch their child on the internet in the kitchen, in the living room. But with this, you can take it anywhere.
Yeah, this police guy's right.
And that opens up Pandora's box.
How did we go from porn to how to build a bomb to Ku Klux Klan to anti-Semitism? Fellas, you ever see some bomb-ass pussy and think, oh man, I want to build a bomb and become racist? Kids nowadays have iPads, their own phones, their game consoles, their own computers. Back in the day, wireless internet was crazy talk, and your only internet-connected device was the family computer in like an odd corner of the living room or the kitchen or in an office room. And if you lived where I did, cable internet either wasn't a thing or cost way too much. For my parents, my mom really only used email, so dial-up was as good as it got starting out. This is the early 2000s. Life was simpler. It wasn't that these technologies were necessarily new or inaccessible. It's just that most people at this point didn't live their life with it, so they weren't so quick to adopt these things into their life. Like nowadays, a new technology comes out, it's pretty quickly adopted. There are many news stories about the dangers of this so-called World Wide Web and the advent of social media with MySpace and whatnot. To Catch a Predator was still running on TV. Many people didn't need or want to use computers. People were skeptical about this stuff, especially with kids. And that brings us to the PlayStation Portable. Released in March 2005, it had Wi-Fi internet access with a surprisingly adequate web browser, superb graphics at the time, which were basically on par with the PlayStation 2, which was still very much the dominant console of the day. Media playback, movies, music, images, storage through the memory stick. I mean, this thing was genuinely impressive for its time. And I think in the time that it existed, the time where it was relevant, it was the best consumer product money could buy. I think I remember getting it for like 250 bucks. Like it was actually a really good deal too. Phones were just starting to get low resolution cameras. They didn't really have apps or online functionality or any storage. The PSP was the ultimate portable multimedia device, bar none, and in my opinion, it's still enjoyable to use casually. Really, it was ahead of its time. And I still to this day don't understand why people chose the DS over the PSP or why more people didn't use it as their multimedia device of choice. I like DS games. I don't like the DS. I think it's an awful console that was just fortunate enough to be developed by Nintendo and have Nintendo first-party games. But for the first time ever, out of the box, you had an internet browser in your hands. And this is in an era where people considered game consoles to be a thing. Like people thought video games were for kids. To my mom, she didn't see this as any different from my Game Boy Advance. It's just the new video game I just had to have. And when I saved up the money to buy it, I was excited because I knew the possibilities. And thankfully, my mom didn't. And I knew that if I told her, she wouldn't let me buy it. I was of the first generation to have the power of the internet in my hands, and my mom was none the wiser. We didn't have Wi-Fi at home, so I'd sit in the back corner of my dining room, pretty much behind a shelf, because that was the best spot in the house to steal my neighbor's Wi-Fi. Their Wi-Fi was entirely unprotected, as was basically every Wi-Fi back in the day. I remember connecting to Belkin.c00 for my Wi-Fi needs, and the whole world of possibilities from the World Wide Web would open up. I think the first thing I tried to do online, besides like download game demos from the PlayStation Store, was use that internet radio function the PSP had. Skype for PSP had just come out when I got my PSP, and I was genuinely afraid to try that because I thought it cost money. My next door neighbors, they would use it to communicate internationally to their family in Macedonia, and I was genuinely terrified to use it because I knew that if you tried to call a phone with it, it would cost money, and I just didn't know how it worked. I remember I saw like a random email address on a flyer, and I used that email to sign up with, thinking they'd like charge the bank account associated to that email. Like, how would they find me, right? I mean, my username just random spam. Maybe I was afraid of the consequences. Maybe I was trying to hide. I don't know. Skype for PSP was pretty baller though. Maybe I talk about more PSP stuff in a different video. But eventually, I boldly went where no 7-year-old has ever gone before. I looked up naked girl boobs on Google. Hey, even then I knew to be specific to mention that they were girls. I was not disappointed. A whole new world opened up to me that day. Way better and more engaging than a friend stealing their dad's Playboy magazine for recess. I had full videos, images I could save, and it was free. It was everything I could have possibly seen. I think the first website I went to was this website called 3pic.com. It had this really scuffed picture of what looked like Quagmire from Family Guy at the top, and it had a mixtures of photos and video. Like back in the day, there were even porn sites that had videos formatted for the PSP. Like PSP porn was so popular, porn sites would dedicate a download button to it, or the whole site would be PlayStation Portables for your PlayStation Portable. And of course, I was way too young for this, but like I didn't know better. It was a factor of curiosity from a lack of access or understanding, seeing other kids do it, knowing that it was a thing people desired to see. Most kids, I don't feel like actually really grow up with a lot of guidance on this. I feel like most kids still don't, or at least not the right guidance. I mean, when you're first starting to discover these things, especially in the age of the internet, you kind of just learn on your own. Like you just kind of have the idea or the curiosity in your head one day and you just kind of seek it out. My opinion of that now as an adult is that that really shouldn't happen. I definitely feel like it messed with my teen years in a way. I definitely expected the like unrealistic porn standards. I think my exposure to porn at such a young age, I definitely didn't fully comprehend what I was seeing or know how to separate it from reality. Understanding sex only through the context of porn where everything is heavily exaggerated, everything is heavily fantasized, like that definitely causes problems in relationships. I remember kids would like brag about their dick being like 8 inches, 9 inches, things like that. When they're like 4'11", you know, back in school, when they're like 5 feet tall. Of course, anybody and everybody who would look down would probably find no more than about 3 inches. And after they hit puberty, they're still not at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably not. The average size is like 5 inches. For the record, guys, mine's 12. 13 on a good day, just in case you were wondering. No, I won't show you. Trust me, bro. I'm not a doctor, but here's the anecdotal of how I think that affected me. Maybe some of you guys will relate. The course of my puberty started really early and took a long time to load, so to speak. Puberty was a really long experience for me. My acne started at 10 years old, really bad pizza face. My voice started to get deeper by the time I started middle school. I was at the height I am now at 13 years old, and I couldn't grow much more than a chin strap until I turned 20, really. And I didn't develop the muscle mass and strength I have now until then either, truth be told. Apparently, I've been gifted with above average testosterone as well. And that has something to do with both why I took to the idea of porn so young and had that desire, and why the idea of sex consumed my teen years, definitely more than most other teens. Like, teens are naturally horny. I really don't believe that men or women are hornier than each other, and as far as I can tell, it's about equal. I think it's more acceptable and accessible for men to explore that, but I definitely could feel the baseline horniness and sexual tension at the moment where everyone was mid-puberty, and I knew I was way above that line. Some of the last conversations I had with my father growing up at that point in time seemed to indicate we had similar experiences with puberty. I think I was naturally more inclined to this. I also think the early porn accessibility definitely messed with my head a bit in that moment. Like, I was definitely a coomer. I'd probably jerk off to about anything in that moment multiple times a day. And this fixation definitely made relationships difficult because I had a pretty high standard when it came to what I wanted out of said relationship. I definitely feel like if I didn't have those standards, I'd probably be more content with that part of my past. Probably would have led to more quality relationships worth like learning from. Like, I'm trying to be really metacognitive about how I think and feel about these things today, now that I'm 23 and not 13. But in the moment, dude, I was a fiend. I think at the end of the day, I turned out all right. I kind of see the long-term effects of this nowadays with people of my age group, and especially people who are younger, who got to grow up with the iPhone, with an iPad in their hands, and they are way, way, way out there with all of this stuff, and it's super uncomfortable for me to see. And I feel bad because I know that that started with my small part of Gen Z having something like the PlayStation Portable accessible, having computer time when the parents weren't home. I know that that's where that started, and I really do believe it has caused a lot of unrealistic expectations, and it's caused a lot of acceleration in sexualization. And I feel like it's caused a lot of unnecessary and uncomfortable sexualization in our society. Like, I don't think that porn should be illegal or anything. I don't have any problem with it morally being available to adults. And I wish there was a good way to get it out of children's hands, especially nowadays with a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on. It feels like kids are subjected to a lot of sexuality nowadays, which I feel like they shouldn't be. Like, looking back at my childhood, I definitely feel like I was too young to be seeing what I was seeing. And I know that it definitely negatively affected me and how I viewed relationships. I feel like now I've recovered from that. Now I understand. Now I have some years under my belt and some maturity, but I don't feel like that is going to save a lot of kids growing up right now. Anyways, thanks for watching. There are sponsor links in the description below if you want to check those out. It would really help me out. Also, make sure to like, comment, and share the video. It would really help me out. Subscribe or follow. Have the day you deserve. Adios.